Okay.
Thanks, Phil. Thank you all for coming. It's fun to come down Route 95 to see you today, and I'll be going right back up Route 95 back to Portland right after we're done today. But it's a thrill to come and talk to you about the challenges libraries are facing now, because there's a perception out there, certainly among many of our administrators, that we don't need libraries anymore. And we certainly don't need to fund libraries anymore because, it's all out there on the web, right? It's all free. We don't serve any real purpose except as a brick and mortar center. On campus, we have those books, those physical books that people still like to read. I challenge that notion, obviously, in my role as a collection development officer, and I'd like to talk with you today about some of the challenges we're facing. So faculty members have been circumventing the library forever. We seem to think that this is a current phenomenon in the digital age, but they've been doing it for as long as I've been a librarian, and certainly before that. The researchers often have personal journal subscriptions to their specific titles, either through a society or in the areas where they're most interested. They have a set of colleagues, a circle of colleagues with whom they exchange information. They did back in the print era. We all remember article reprints. I have a shelf full of these. Remember they used to give you like 20 copies of your articles so that you could share them? They made great stocking stuffers at Christmas. I don't think I ever gave one away. And then also a lot of the departments had their own collections. So I have a degree in higher education from Penn State, and they still have their own departmental library. And they often refer their students to that library rather than sending them to the central library, which is 200 yards away. It's quite remarkable. But in that era, I think many people didn't believe that libraries were irrelevant because we were still central in providing physical collections and services, particularly to students. We still provided in the library loan services, and we do today, for those articles where they maybe didn't know people in that area of research. Again, and we were a physical presence on campus, the heart of the university. Today, only the medium has changed, so it's much easier to get in touch with a colleague and say, could you send me an attachment of your current article? And as we know, many of our faculty colleagues don't read their copyright waivers when they submit them, and so they often freely do distribute their own research to colleagues. They share data perhaps not quite as freely. A lot of institutions are encouraging open access, either within their own institutional repository or even on researchers' own homepages outside of the institutional parameters. And the question we have with that is, it's great to have open access mandates, but how are we tracking that information and how is it locatable outside of a Google Scholar or Google realm? People still have personal subscriptions, believe it or not. Sometimes they're just digital, but a lot of us are members of societies, and we still get our own primary journals that way. Of course, if you want a book, you can generally order it on Amazon and circumvent the library entirely. So the question becomes, why do we need libraries at this point? Librarians are in a catch-22 situation. We need to have faculty and administrators understand that we still provide most of that peer-reviewed content to them. They may be getting to it from Google Scholar, but point of fact is they are often then linked right back into the library. They just don't realize it because they've started outside of our system. And our funding is at stake for libraries, and therefore a lot of your revenue is at stake. If we don't have the funding, we can't buy materials. But we also don't want to impose barriers on our researchers so that they see us as an impediment to getting the information. They don't want to have to go through all of the hoops that in many cases libraries force upon them. It's just the nature of how we have to provide information through proxy servers and authentication and those things. So this is it's a real conundrum for us. How do we get users to information but have them also remember that we are in fact curating a lot of the material that they're able to get to? So how have we tried to resolve this dilemma? Discovery services are the way we're now trying to do this. We're trying to create, and I'm sure all of you are aware of Summary and Primo and the big discovery tools. We're trying to mimic the Google experience with a single search box, but we're trying to limit the information to which our users are able to get to through that search because it's content that we have in some way selected in the library world. The challenge we have in many cases is how do we get people to use it? They have to get to the library page. They have to actually find us first before they can find that search box. And we all know that researchers are not even coming to the library homepage. They're using Google Scholar. A lot of our web analytics are showing that that's how they're getting to content. We still try to resolve that dilemma through interlibrary loan and document delivery services. At Bates College, we're a small liberal arts college. We hire a lot of our faculty out of R1s. They're used to being able to access all the content they need because they came from Michigan or Stanford. They seem to when we hire them, we attempt to educate them about how we provide information services at a small liberal arts college. Interlibrary loan and document delivery for us is not considered a failure of service. It's actually considered a critical piece of what we do for our researchers. And a lot of publishers are also providing a seamless way of doing that through basically token access. Wiley is the one that we use primarily at Bates. Users don't know that we're paying per click, we're paying per article delivery, but in fact we are supplying that information to them. The challenge that raises for us, of course, is budgeting. We just have absolutely no way to determine what the use of that kind of service will cost us in a year. We're just looking at our document delivery costs right now, and we have a particular researcher who wants all of his documents delivered in color. So that means that we pay $35, $40 an article because we can't use regular interlibrary loan mechanisms to get that content. It's part of what we do to support their research, but we're seeing that our costs are becoming prohibitive in that area. The other thing that we do is educate, educate, educate. We, at a small college, are able to touch almost every student who comes into our doors. We have it's actually close to 100% touch rate or contact rate with our students. So they don't see the library as an impediment. We don't have quite that contact with our faculty. And again, by the time they get to us, their research processes are very ingrained in what they do. So they learn to work within their own communities, and they just don't see the library necessarily as a critical pathway to information. The other thing we want are options, and that's one reason I was very interested to participate in this panel. We are always looking for different ways to keep the library in the mix, but also allow the publishers to provide seamless or seamless, we wish it was totally seamless, but it's not, but easier access to information, but while partnering still with us so that there is an understanding of the flow of information and how they're getting to it. One of these decisions obviously doesn't fit everybody, and that's why we still retain all of these different avenues and pathways to get to information that the libraries provide. So what can you do to help us? Branding seems like such an old issue, but as much as you can help us brand your content with our names, brought to you by Bates College, it really does go a long way to reminding our users that they are coming through us to get to your content. Remove DRM as much as you possibly can and other hurdles that impede access. If a platform is difficult to use, people won't use it. They'll complain about it. And when we're looking at budget cuts or flat budgets, those are often the targets, because if people aren't using them because the platform is a barrier, then we're not seeing usage information. So we don't have usage, the content isn't being used, that content's going to be the first to be cut. So it's very important that you make your platforms and your access pathways user-friendly. Please don't make us choose between access and content. If we need to get the content to our users, we want the access to be useful, but if you're going to provide another layer of information management, you need to work with us on pricing models, because given the choice between paying for an access mechanism versus the content itself, the content's going to win in that universe. Ensure that your content is open access, or open URL compliant. This seems like a small thing. It seems like, again, an old-fashioned thing, but there is still content out there that we can't link to through our linking services. Again, that's going to drive your usage statistics down, and that's going to mean that we're going to look at that information critically and potentially for cancellation. Provide your metadata to the discovery systems. Same exact reason. If people aren't discovering them, if we can get them to use the discovery services in the first place, that does drive up a lot of use. We've seen some publisher data that shows that after the implementation of a discovery service, if their metadata is robust, their information rises higher in search results. So be sure to provide that information to all of those discovery service providers. And please partner with us to send the message to our users that while you publish the content, we are partners with you in getting that content to our users. And so we are, in fact, partners in this process rather than adversaries, and it's just a critical conversation that we need to continuously have, probably forever. And I'm going to pass it to Grace.
Yeah. So.